everyone. I hope your Saturday has been going well. And thanks for joining in today with Yan. We have a really interesting session lined up. So, we might wonder, what is even self branding and why do I need it? It is only for influential people, influential individuals, or people who are, uh, promoting themselves on several channels. But why do I even need it? So the reality is that whether you know it or not, you have a personal brand, because when you Google yourself, what pops up? Have you ever wondered that? So these results that you see, these are the first impression that people will have on you. It can be through any platform. It can be through the access that you're sharing through, let's say, LinkedIn, Facebook, or in our case, in the design industry, there are platforms like Behance and everything. So whether you have a job interview, or someone wants to look up to you, look up what as to what you're looking for, so chances are that someone is going to Google you and learn more about who you are. And that is, while every one of us is occupied as to only focusing on our jobs, or let's say designing for industries, designing for several companies. And for that reason, we have the session with us today. And to speak about this, we have Yan with us. Yan is a certified human-centered designer and a design leader, speaker, and mentor with over 20 years of experience in the international industry. So he has spent half of his career in the agency side of things, but then he moved on to design for clients. So he has worked with hundreds of companies, including some of the world's largest brands. So I think that's enough of me. And yeah, Yan, it's over to you.
Hey everyone, I take it it's evening for all of you. It's morning for me. I'm coming to you all from New York. And as Afif mentioned, right, branding is something that is not necessarily for only Hollywood stars and famous people, singers and whatnot, musicians. But it is incredibly important for all of us, really, as creatives. So I wanted to give a bit of a kind of input onto what's going to happen today, what we're going to be covering, how it's going to go. So first thing to know is I do use a DSLR camera for my camera. It does have a 30-minute recycling kind of a refresh. So you guys will see a little bit of a shut off. You'll see a Canon logo for just a fraction of a second. It'll come back. Don't worry about that. Nothing broke on your side. It's on my side. Everything's fine. We may or may not take a little break in the middle of all that for about 5 or 10 minutes. I do want to be cautious of the fact that people need a break. We don't all have an ability to sit through an hour and a half of a presentation or a chat. If you have questions, feel free to ask. Fif will assist me here and will answer, relay the questions to me. We may or may not engage with you guys depending on how the presentation goes. And I guess without further ado, I'll kick it off. I will share my screen and all right, branding. And in this case, it is self-branding. So why are we talking about self-branding? For those of you who don't know what self-branding means, let's try and cover that specific subject if anyone have questions. What does self-branding mean? It really means what it sounds. It is self-branding. You can see other brands such as Coca-Cola, McDonald's, British Airlines, Australian Airlines, Adidas, Nikes, and so forth. These are all corporations, these are all brands, and each brand has value. Now, you can actually Google it. You can Google the worth of a value of a brand. So if you go and Google, let's say, how much Nike worth as a brand, there is a number that's worth to the brand itself, which means that little swoosh of a logo with that Nike name worth billions of dollars without anything else that they do or anything else that they have. Now, in this specific situation, we are talking about self-branding. Self-branding is essentially a person that is becoming well-known either within a very specific industry or industry agnostic, which means in general, typically industry agnostic people who are famous, if you will. These are the Hollywood actors or any other actors. These are the musicians, the singers, sports professionals, professional athletes, and so forth. These are kind of industry agnostic. Yes, they are specializing in a specific industry, but they're very famous and well known globally, regardless of if the people are in that industry or not. I'm going to show a few people, and curious if anyone knows that or not, but this person I'm showing here right now, his name is Chris Do. Chris Do is one of the most well-known design leaders or design kind of household names in the industry, at least within the Western world, for everything that he's done so far. And I'll cover a little bit about him in a minute. I hope everyone knows who that is. This is Jony Ive. Jony Ive is the mastermind behind most of the most famous Apple products. He is the industrial designer of most of the things we have: Apple's, the iMac, the iPod, iPhone, and the list goes on. He's been working with Steve Jobs prior to Tim Cook, and then Tim Cook, and I think last year he quit Apple for the first time in several decades to go and form his own agency. Now, some of you may know who that is, some of you may not. This guy's name is Stephen Gates. Stephen Gates is also another household name in the design industry, at least in North America and Europe a little bit. Now, what do all of these three people have in common? They're all designers. There is a million other designers like them. Chris Do is not the only person that can do everything that he does. Jony Ive is not the only person in the world that can do everything that he does. Steve Gates is definitely not the only person in the world that can do what he does. Right now, he is a senior vice president, omni-channel design at Weight Watchers, or WW as they're known called today. Formerly, he was the global design evangelist at Envision, and before that, he was a global head of design at Citibank. A lot of us have these positions. I personally know people who are currently one of the most senior executive leaders in the design industry at MasterCard, at Capital One, at different banks, other big companies, and so forth. Yet, people don't necessarily know them. So why do we know these people? It's because they made sure to create a self-brand. They made sure to work very hard that every time you Google their name, as Afif mentioned earlier, you're not seeing only just a few links. You're seeing pages upon pages upon pages of everything that they have done, everything they said, everywhere they appeared, everything they've been doing in the last X amount of years, and everything they're planning to do in the next couple of years. So why do we do this? Now, self-branding has core values and core golden rules in order to proceed with them, in order to establish them and have them and be successful at it. I'm going to start kind of chipping away from all of these. Now, the golden rules are, we'll start with focus. When I'm talking about focus, I'm not talking about just being focused at being good at your self-branding, but you need to figure out that one thing that you want to be talking about, that one thing that will set you apart, that one thing that will make you, you. My self-branding is, I am brutally honest. Everyone who knows me, everyone who ever spoken to me, every place that I've ever spoken at, every mentee that I've mentored, they all say the same thing about me. This guy is very brutally honest, which means I don't sugarcoat situations. I don't sugarcoat about the industry. I say it how it is. That's my focus, to always be brutally honest with everyone. What is your focus? Something that you'll need to sit down at some point if you do want to pursue self-branding and do have your name more broadly available in the public, then you'll need to figure out what is that thing that makes you, you. The next thing is authenticity. What does that really mean? It means that what you're saying you truly believe in, and what you're saying is this is who you are. You don't invent things, you don't lie about things, you don't say things, part of my language, out of your ass. You're you're being true to yourself and you're being true to what you believe, and you speak your mind to what you believe. Story. Story is an integral part of your self-branding. Self-branding is not just a little logo that you created with your name and you put it out there and it's there. Self-branding essentially means that your story is being told as a story. And as an example, my story is I started my career almost 25 years ago, and I made a choice to become a web designer at the worst possible time of this industry, which was late 90s, early 2000s, when the dot-com collapse happened. Some of you who don't know what that is, Google dot-com bubble collapse or explosion, whatever you want to call it. It is essentially the major recession that happens in the late 90s, early 2000s in the tech industry in the United States, where the entire basically tech industry stock market went down collapsing because it was a bubble. And at that time, no one knew what the industry is going to be. No one had no idea what's going to happen with the thing called internet. No one had no idea if such professions as designing for the web will even exist in a few years. But I loved it. I loved it to such extent that I dropped out of my college. I was doing my BA in architecture and interior design, and I decided to become a web designer. And I was struggling and going hungry for the first couple of years, working at odd jobs as gas station night shifts. I was working at a place where I was assembling little devices that swallow your bill for the vending machines, and you name it. There was a bunch of different jobs that I switched. But eventually I made it. I made it. Why? Because I really wanted to. I believed in myself. I believed that there is a future in that. I had no idea if I'll ever be able to make money or a career out of it, but I wanted to be that so much, I didn't care. And that's where your story comes from, right? What is telling about you to the public? How do you talk about yourself to the public? How do you tell about yourself to the public? Consistency. We'll cover that a little bit in a later part of the presentation as well. What does it mean? Consistency really means that everywhere you talk, everywhere you appear, everywhere you share your opinion, everywhere you share your views or anything else, you stay consistent. You don't change your narrative. You don't change your story. You don't change your perceptions. You don't change your visual appearance, if you will, not necessarily clothing and stuff, but your logo, if you have a logo, your style of colors that you made a decision to pursue and have follow you everywhere, such as your logo or your website, or if you want to do business cards, your business cards and things like that. I know that it sounds a little bit kind of a businessy for people who are looking for a job to have business cards and have a website and logo and whatnot, but at the end of the day, we are creatives. And the only way for us to show the public of what we can do and who we are is through those visual means. Is the website, is the logo, is the maybe a business card or anything else, or a cap or a t-shirt, whatever that might be. And the last and one of the most important parts is integrity. Never lie. I know it sounds kind of silly and kind of preaching to the choir maybe, but be honest. Don't play people. Don't play games. Don't try to invent things that don't exist, because it will be public eventually. People will figure that out. So always stay true to yourself. Always be honest with other people, and never try to trick or reinvent things that don't exist. How do you plan for that? I just covered a lot of different parts of how do you get to a fairly successful self-branding. You need to break it into two pieces. One is the short term and one is the long term. Now, the short term is not something that you're doing for the first time when you start kind of inventing your self-brand, but you consistently working through it, which means every so often you revisit, every so often you update, every so often you plan, and you keep going and going and going. So let's look at what is really a short-term goal should look like. And this is typically anywhere between 6 to 12 months. So when you're looking at it, you need to look around and see, okay, what do I have around me? You have your job. You have your projects or whatnot. You have your network. It can be your friends. It can be your colleagues. It can be people you know. It can be people you've met. It can be anything or anyone that you have a reach to. You have your projects. These are your use cases. These are your clients that you maybe worked with or working with right now, and so forth. Then you have a social network. Professional social network is LinkedIn. I would highly recommend utilizing LinkedIn for these things, not so much Facebook. You want to use Instagram? Yes, that will be helpful. You want to use other social networks? Sure. But LinkedIn is one of those professional social networks that still keep to its core, even today, of being that connector of people, of professional people. All of this need to play together. Now, all of this needs to be tied together, which means anything you publish on your website, you need to talk about it on LinkedIn. Anything you publish on your projects, you should talk about it on LinkedIn. Anything that you talk about on LinkedIn should be visible on your website or within your network or within your projects, or you can share it at your job with your colleagues. It's almost like an internal kind of a closed loop of the information that is circling and flowing between your job, projects, network, social media, social networking, and so forth. It's constantly flowing. Within the first 6 to 12 months, you slowly start building that credibility and visibility. Because if you've never done this before, you're invisible. Your name is there, but there's nothing that ties to that name. And as Afif also mentioned, if somebody wants to hire you, and especially, I don't know about your part of the world, but especially in the United States, North America, and Western countries, employers do like to Google and research people to see what do they post on Facebook, what do they post on Instagram, are they active on LinkedIn, what do they talk about on LinkedIn, are they political, are they not, are they talking about some bad things that maybe it goes against the policies of the company, and so many different reasons.
Sorry, could you say that?
My Siri decided to answer me right now.
I'm not sure I understand.
My Siri likes to talk to me. Cool. That was fun. Now, when you have your kind of a 6 to 12 month short-term goals fairly ironed out, what do you do next? Next part is, what do you do in the long term? Now, your long term typically should be looking anything between 12 months and beyond. That beyond can be 5, 10 years, even though I would not recommend planning 5 or 10 years ahead, because the world is changing so fast and so rapidly that who knows what's going to be out there and important or not important in the next, I don't know, couple of years. But the combination of the things that you need to be planning for in the long-term post 12 months is developing your voice, developing your style, getting involved, sharing your opinions, sharing your experience, polishing your portfolio. Let's go one by one. Developing your voice. What does that mean? That is the one thing that I mentioned earlier, that you develop your style of who you are. I have developed mine as brutally honest creative, meaning if I think that something is not right, I will speak out. I will say it. I'm not going to hide it. Here we go. I am not going to keep it to myself. I am very vocal. I'm very outspoken. People know this about me. People who want to hire me, they know who they're hiring. They know that I will not be that person to sit quietly in the corner. If I disagree with the CEO of the company, I will speak up, and I will not be sugarcoating it. I will be brutally honest with that CEO. Oftentimes, companies hire me because of those values, because they want somebody on their team that will tell them how it is and not play games with them and not try to be nice with them. Developing your style. Developing your style means is mostly creative style. Who are you? Do you believe in brutalism? Do you believe in minimalism? Do you believe in abstract? Do you believe in loud design styles? Do you believe in 3D arts? Do you believe that's your kind of a design style? My design style, I'm a simplist and minimalist. That's who I am, have been for decades. And that's what I promote typically. So you need to figure out what is your creative style. Obviously, you can figure out if you just graduated school, it will take you some time, but the way to figure this out is literally try everything. Try to design a website, try to design an app, try to design a business card, a postcard, a poster, a CD cover. Try yourself in any possible creative field you can get your hands on to see which way you really are and which direction you really want to go. That will help you figure that out. Getting involved. What it means is getting involved within your own community. And when I say our own community, I'm talking about design community, which means that you're getting involved in different Slack channels and different communities, meetups and whatnot. When you meet with people, you talk to them, you share stuff, you learn from them, you help them if they need to, and so forth. Sharing your opinions. When you share your opinions, and mind you, you have to be very careful. You can't just share any opinion. You need to really think about when you're sharing your opinions, are your opinions something that you truly believe in? Because if you're sharing opinions for the sake of sharing opinions, people will see through you, and that's when your authenticity goes out the window. So when you're sharing an opinion, you should be sharing only the things that you truly believe in and you stand behind. Because if anyone will challenge that, you'll need to be able to defend it. Sharing your experience. Anything and everything you learn on your journey as a creative, you should share. I know it sounds silly, but you should share. Because believe it or not, other people learn from other people's experience. All of you here right now, listening to me and my experience. That's what I'm doing right now. I am sharing my experience, my opinions. I am getting involved with the community and helping out. I'm doing all of this for the sake and the benefit of other creatives in the industry. And the last one is polishing your portfolio. Portfolio is the one thing that people see without talking to you. You can't go around and fly around the world and shake everyone's hand and tell everyone how great you are. You have to show it. You have to show it without talking to them. How do you show it without talking to them? Is having your own polished portfolio website where you have your own story, where you have your own work, where you showcase your style, where you might even be sharing your opinions and your experience and so forth. It's a vital, and I repeat it, vital part of your professional life and your self-branding. Now we're going forward. You have a job. You got a job. That's awesome. Job is a great thing. Pays your bill. It gives you the sense of belonging. It gives you the sense of purpose. It gives you the sense of doing something great and greater maybe than yourself. But believe it or not, every single job should be considered not only the place where you do your best work, but also a stepping stone to the next one. And when I say that, I worked with hundreds of companies before. I worked at dozens of companies. only in the last 7 years, I worked in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 companies. Every company is, as much as I love every single one of them, and I've made some great friends from those companies, when I walk into a company on my first probably a quarter or thereabouts, I evaluate what can I learn here that will help me next or in the next company. So your job is not only there to give you what you need in order to survive, as salary, community, growth, maybe learning opportunities, but also how to utilize that time at that company that will help you grow your personal brand. And so to touch on, and I'm going to go back to those people that I shared earlier, such as Chris Do, Johnny Ive, Stephen Gates, and so many others. Every single company they've been with, well, Johnny Ive is a different case because he's been with one company for, I don't know, 20 some years. But every single company they've been with, they've gathered something from there and they've been using it to promote and propel their brand. As an example, Chris Do used to be in agencies and he created some great work. He got some awards and obviously he talks about it. He uses that part to share with the public, say, here, not in those direct words, but here, look at me. I've done all of that work. I've got all of these awards. This is me. And that's why other companies want to hire him. This is why Chris Do charges, I think, $1,000 an hour for mentorship. He does. I believe somewhere on YouTube he said it himself. $1,000 an hour. I think that goes in the league of one of the most expensive lawyers that charge that much, or in that vicinity. Equally the same when you're looking at Stephen Gates or anyone else, or even me. I'm not going to lie, even me, every company that I've been with, I utilized what I've learned at that company, what I've done at that company to essentially talk about what I have done, how, and so forth to propel, to keep growing my personal brand. And that in lieu helps me to keep getting next job and next job and next job. It's not only about portfolios in this case. So how do we do that? We need to break it down in a few pieces. Your job. What do we collect from your job? What do we do with your job? First, track what you do. I'm not kidding. Literally just track everything you do. Collect artifacts. Be proactive. Build relationships. Let's cover the details of that. When I say track everything you do, I really mean it. I personally do track everything I do. And those are in day-to-day tasks, internal interactions, and external interactions, accomplishments, appreciations, positive and negative feedback. All of these are important. Why are they important? When you know exactly what you do day to day, this is something you can always put on your LinkedIn, on your resume, and so forth, because that's where you're kind of being asked to explain what have you done in your previous company. If you don't remember and you're being in an interview for another company, that looks really bad when you can't articulate what exactly have you done for the previous employer. Tasks. The reason why I'm saying that you should be recording or at least remembering in some way what kind of tasks you are performing, because sometimes, just sometimes, we do tasks that are not directly tied into our title at work or what we're supposed to be doing, but they are something that will help us do something in the next company. As an example, in my last company, right? Not the current one, but my last company, I was tasked with understanding the accessibility side of our product. Why? Because I was the head of design. That was my job, is to oversee everything design related within the company. Designing for accessibility landed on my plate. Now, did I know anything about accessibility? No. That I had a vague understanding of it? Yes, I did. So once that landed on my plate, I'm one of those people that I like to know in depth everything that I'm working on, everything I do. And so I went out and I took a course in accessibility for a few months. And I learned specifically what accessibility is, how to comply for accessibility, regulations, laws, and everything else, got certified in it. But not so I can build our product accessibility certified, but so I can work with accessibility agencies that do that for the company, the audits and everything else. And so I can speak their language, so I can communicate with them, understand what they're talking about, and they can understand my needs as a company. Then I took that, and as you can see in my long title, and I added that to my title, and added that to my experience. Now that gave me a boost in my professionalism and my credibility. So now the next employer that looks at me will be there sitting there. We're looking for a head of design, and we have these 10 people that are, we think, really great. But there's this guy, but that he's not only good at design, but he's also certified in accessibility. And we need that on our product. We're going to hire this guy. That's how it works. It's not only about the fact that I did this in my last company, but it's the fact that I got certified in it. It's the fact that I became very vocal about it. It's the fact that I already spoke about it in several settings and different events. I wrote about it, published articles about it. All of that adds to my brand. And so when somebody is looking for somebody like me in their company, they will be evaluating me against all the other ones that have similar experience, but might not have the collection of knowledge that I have. Nobody knows about that knowledge unless you go make it public. You can't make it public or have that knowledge if you don't remember that you were exposed to it at your company, or you did not record that specific one task, little thing that could set you apart from your next opponents, if you will, for a job position. Next one is collecting artifacts. One of the biggest things that I've seen over the years that a lot of people do, or actually, let me correct myself, not do, is collect artifacts. We are designers. We are creatives. The only thing that shows what we can do is the visual artifact. And I would encourage you to collect everything. I still have projects that I worked on back in 2002 and 2003 and 4 and 5 and going forward. I have a library of almost every project and every client that I worked with, worked on, and worked at since around 2003. And in every one of those folders, I have every single possible artifacts, including some open PSDs and stuff like that, when Photoshop was the ruling class of everything. Because when we present and we put things in our portfolio, oftentimes employers, other designers, other leaders, and so forth, not only looking to see the final product, but oftentimes they're looking to see your thought process, your process in general. How did you go about solving a problem? How did you think about a project? How did you think about a problem? How did you find that problem? And so forth. And all of these little pieces play a very important part in assembling a collective story of that specific use case. And that adds up to your credibility and your brand as somebody meticulous, as somebody detail-oriented, and as somebody who understands the value of every single piece in the process. So collect all of your artifacts. keep them aside, put them on your portfolio when you need them. It will help you in your next job. Be proactive. When I talk about that is step up. And what I mean by that is if somebody in the company, one of your leadership said that we have a problem, we need help with so-and-so, or we had to let go of somebody on this team, and now we have no one there. If you know you can handle this part, step up and say, I'll take it over. Don't ask for a raise. Don't ask for a perk. Don't ask for gratitude. Just quietly, nicely step up and say, I'll help out. I'll do that. It's not just because it will help your brand, but essentially, if you do want to be seen as a team player, as somebody who will always be there for other people, it will add to your brand eventually. And you will be seen in the future as somebody who's going to be a great addition to somebody's team. And that's your goal. Self-branding is not there to make you famous. Self-branding is there to build your credibility and build your name in the industry that other companies want to hire. Not willing to hire, want to hire. Two different things. Companies who are willing to hire you, that means they have an opening, they have a need, you fit that need, they hired you. Companies who want you, sometimes, even if they don't have a position for you, they'll find one, or they will invent one. Just like in some cases of some of these people that I mentioned earlier today. Some of them being on different companies with titles that didn't exist before, but they get hired for that position. Why? That position was created specifically for them. Why? Because the company wanted them so badly on their team. That's what it means. Raise your hand when somebody asks or needs help. Don't ask for permission. I know it sounds odd, but when I say don't ask for permission, I say if you see that you need to do something and that's the right thing to do, just do it. Don't go to your manager. Don't see if you're going to get a permission for that. Just do it. The worst case will happen. You'll get fired. But then you're going to have a great story. And that story, my friends, I'll give you an example from my personal life. Some years ago, let me have a sip. Some years ago, I was working at a company. And the company really loved me. They praised me. They gave me a bonus. They gave me a bump in my salary way before my 12-month mark. I think it was like 10 months or something like that. When they said, we love you that much, we're going to give you a bonus now. We're going to raise your salary now. On my yearly review, I was past accolades. The VP of product loved me, loved everything I was doing. I helped them reinvent their product completely from scratch. And eventually the company got acquired. And then when the company got acquired, after a while, a few months, I got fired. Why did I get fired? Because I was demanding to do my job. I didn't ask for permission. I just did things and I got fired. And I'm immensely proud of it. And I talk about it publicly. It is the first time in my entire career that I was fired. You can get let go for whatever reasons. You can quit, but fired. That's something that never happened to me in my almost 25-year career. Funny, isn't it? But I took that and I tell it as a story. And that story adds to my brand. And that adds to my brand of being brutally honest and believing in what I do to the core that I am willing to get fired, but not to let down the users. I am willing to get fired, but not say that, okay, I'm not going to research with these people because my boss said not to. I am willing to get fired to build a great product. That's who I am. That's my brand. That's why a lot of companies do want to hire me. That's why in many cases, companies want to work with me. Clients want to work with me because I deeply believe in the human-centered design approach, in building products for the human beings, not just for profits, not just for the companies, not just for the sake of somebody's, some CEO that wanted some feature in because it sounded cool, but because I truly believe building great products for people. Hence, just do without asking. And the last part is building relationships. Building relationships is one of the most important things you should do or can do or have to do, really, I would say even, in a company. And it is the building relationship part is can be complex, right? We're dealing with other people. We as human beings, we are complex. We have our issues, problems, beliefs, and so forth. But I look at it from perspective of simply recognizing people. Somebody did something good, give them a pat on the back. Say, awesome, great job, well done. Be helpful. Try to always help people. People who help other people are viewed as a good person. I'm not doing these things just to be viewed as a good person. I'm doing these things because that's who I am. But I found over the years that when you're being helpful to people, people just generally flock to you. It's just simple math. Be respectful, very respectful. Always respect people's opinion, always respect people's difference of opinion and their different belief systems. Because that's how we as humans build trust with each other, when we respect each other and we don't question each other's belief systems, because we're all different. Share your know-how. In the company, if you know something, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with other people. Invite people into your process. What I mean by that, when you're building relationships with people outside of your immediate team, right? Engineers, product, stakeholders, and whatnot, invite them into your process. Show them how you do what you do. It's not only helpful to you and state your case for why you need to do certain features, but it also shows them that you're not afraid to fail. You're not afraid to share. You're not afraid to say that you are wrong. If in the research, something that you wanted to build was discovered that will be useless, and that's okay. That's how you also build trust with your stakeholders and your senior management, that they trust you to do the right things, not because you want to, but because you believe and you trust and you have a process and you look at data. Ask for help. Many people, especially junior level designers, I noticed, don't always ask for help. They always feel that they need to figure all this thing out by themselves. They don't. You don't. Regardless of the level of your seniority in the company, regardless of how many years of experience you have, if you don't understand something, if you don't know something, just ask. I ask for help all the time. If somebody says something or asks me something and I don't know, I'll say I don't know. If I need help, I'll say I need help. If I don't know and I can't get help, I'll figure it out. I'll go find the answers and I'll come back and say, here's the answers that I found elsewhere. Ask for help. And one other thing is be available. One of the things that I notice with people is people are not being available. People are dismissive. You got an email. It doesn't mean you have to reply right away. But if you cannot reply within the first hour or two, at least make an acknowledgement of the fact that you received that email by sending an email back saying, hey, got your email. I'll read over it. I'll get back to you later or tomorrow. But at least make that acknowledgement. It's not about showing other people that you're working when you might not be. It's just respectful. It's respectful to show other people that you respect them and you respect their time. You understand that they send you an email and they expect a response. So you don't just brush it off and say, okay, I don't have time right now. I'll reply tomorrow. I'm busy. I'm out. I don't know, whatever, having dinner. It's about just being respectful, and it just builds a lot more credibility and adds to your brand and the future brand. So what is the best strategy for you? Not for me, not for anyone else, but for you to get there, to get to all of this, right? To build your brand. There is only 3 sentences or lines that I'll give you. And these are the things that I live by for the past probably 15 plus years, if not more. And it's a constant reminder to me of how to keep going. And those are, who am I? These are the questions that you should remind yourself on a regular basis. Let's say you're a UX designer. When you see the question, who am I? You say, I am a UX designer. Next question you should be answering, where am I going? I can't answer that for you. That's something you have to figure out and sit down and make a decision for yourself. Where are you going? Do you want to be a leader? Do you want to be a mentor? Do you want to be a manager? Do you want to be a senior designer? That's up to you to decide, not up to me. And the last one is, how do I get there? Everything I just listed, everything that we just went through, entire presentation, if you will. These are some of the many steps of how do you get there. But those steps should not be a Bible. They should be flexible, because sometimes you're going to have to adjust, you're going to have to change, and you have to figure out a few things on your own of how exactly to get where you're going. But every so often, I have a whiteboard. On it, I have these 3 questions. Who am I? Where am I going? How do I get there? I've been doing this for almost 25 years, and I still ask those questions because every so often, my opinions may change. My answers may change of who am I? Where do I want to go? And how should I get there? Now look at online or offline, or online versus offline. Is there a difference? There isn't. There's only one thing you need to remember between online and offline: consistency. Always speak the same thing. Always be consistent with your approach, with your belief system, with your words. Anything you say should be consistent between what you post online, blog posts, videos, articles, I don't know, sharing your opinions in forums, Slack channels, events, whatever that is. Same thing in physical world. Your belief system should be consistent on both ends, online and offline. So people that meet you on both offline and online see that you're the same person. And you're not created a persona for online and where you live a second life. And all this information we just covered, eventually should boil down to one thing. And that is telling a story. Telling a story about yourself. Telling a story about your experience. Telling a story about your successes and your failures. Your failures are equally as important as your successes, because success does not exist without failure. Here we go again. And as somebody that I know always likes to say, a success story is always on hindsight. It's something that we recollect. We've never seen that success when we're working on it, but we always talk about it in post. So how do you build your story? Your story essentially is built from several components. What is your unique skill? When you talk about yourself, when you talk about you with somebody and you tell your story about yourself, what is that one unique skill that makes you, you? I'll give you an example from me. My story started with the fact that I always talked about that I am the only web designer at the time, at least to the best of my knowledge, that was specializing in human and color psychology. That's not claim, right? Why would a web designer be specializing in human and color psychology? I was, and I still am. Why? Because when I was in college for interior design architecture doing my BA, we had a subject, color and human psychology. Essentially, that subject covered how colors in a space, behind me you see right now a dark blue, on the side you see a white, right, kind of an off-white color and stuff like that. How colors in different spaces influence people's psychology. It is an actual science. And I study it, which means that makes me somebody who knows how colors influence human psychology. And I applied that knowledge when I was designing websites. That's how it helped me to know how to build a website with such proper color palettes that drove sales, drove traffic, made people feel welcome, made people feel excited or not. Depends on the color palettes and how do they play together. That made me a unique hire, somebody who will bring to the team something different, something that others don't. That was part of my story. That is one unique skill that I figured out early on that I can bring with me and use it to my advantage in order to progress my career and talk about me and my story with that unique skill. It gave me an advantage. Still does. I don't mention it as much anymore because I've been doing it for a long time, but I still do in conversations. That is my unique skill. Among today, an array of many others. But when I was starting out, that was my main hook that I could utilize in an interview, in a job application that made me stand out. Next part is what you do before. In the last couple of years, I've been mentoring a lot of people. Pandemic and whatnot, I joined ADP List when it just was a Google Sheet when Felix invited me to join. And I spoke with hundreds of people in the last couple of years. People who are transitioning into UX and product design. People are just starting out their careers after high school and deciding to go into UX and product design. And the one thing that I notice is a trend. People don't necessarily like or want to talk about the before. They come and say, I am now a product designer. Okay, what did you do before? Oh, nothing special, really. I was just a nurse, or I was a carpenter, or I was a mechanic. You see, the problem is that people don't realize that even these skills that ultimately not necessarily translatable into UX product are incredibly important, and they say a lot about who you are as a creative. I don't shy away from talking about what I did before I decided to become a web designer. I did a lot. I was an artist. I was a fashion designer. I played around a little bit in industrial design. I worked at different odd jobs. I was an order picker at a warehouse. I worked at a gas station, and so on and so forth. I'm also a former soldier. Yes, I spent 2 years in the military. All of these things combined makes us us. Every single one of us have a unique experience of life. What we do, how we do it, at what point, what do we derive from it, what do we learn from it, and what do we carry from it for the rest of our lives. What we do before can say a lot about who we are. If, let's say, you came from being a mechanic, car mechanic, you know what it says to me? You know how to take a very complex thing as an engine and possibly take it apart and know exactly how to put it back together without leaving any parts out. That means, to me, you're incredibly detail-oriented. If you're a nurse, to me, that says that you have an impeccable experience dealing with stressful situations and unknowns and respond to them right away. If you've been a driver, I know that you can probably stick to something for a very long time and still keep doing it without getting too tired about it. And it means you can work with people because you have before. So everything you've done before can be brought into your story about who you are into the new future and add to your brand. If any one of you goes to my website and reads about me on my page of about, I tell my story, and my story makes me me, makes me unique, makes me with my unique experience that I can bring to any project, any company, and so forth. Just like as an example, I spent 4.5 years in a company that deals with cybersecurity and digital identity. I was in the design team. I was running a design team. I had nothing to do or shouldn't have anything to do with the side of engineering and code and all these type of things. And yet I did. Why? Because I was curious. I wanted to know. I wanted to learn. I wanted to know more. And so now when I go and I speak to somebody and say that and talk about cybersecurity and digital identity and privacy and different authentication systems and different methodologies in passwordless authentication systems, now I am one of the few, considered to be, at least from somebody I just interviewed me a few days ago, considered to be one of the few creative leaders that actually understands the value and knows how to talk about it and knows the tech behind that. That makes me with an added value to any company that maybe specializes in that or maybe wants to add that layer into their product. That adds to my story. And the last one is, where did you come from? That goes into immigrations, mostly. I'm an immigrant. For those of you who don't know, I was born in Soviet Union in a side of Ukraine that is being bombarded right now by Russia. I grew up in Israel. I lived in Canada for 6.5 years. And I live in the United States for the last almost a decade now. How is that has to do anything with my story and my brand? Well, my friends, what it does to my brand is my multiculturalism. The fact that I am, as a creative, when I look at a product, when I look at anything about that product, I don't just look at a product. I always look at it, how does this product impact different cultures? How does that product or this feature or this flow impacts people who are multilingual? I speak 3 languages. Some words in English, in Russian, sound offensive. Some words in English, in Hebrew, I do speak Hebrew, might sound offensive. So how do you build that product that if you want to deploy in other countries with other languages, will not be offensive. That's part of my story. That's part of who makes me me once again. And so when you build your story, you need to look at these three core elements of what is your unique skill, what did you do before, and where did you come from? Put it all together and create a narrative and create that story about who you are and what do you believe in and why do you believe in that? Because my past. On that note, thank you everyone for listening for my little rant. I'm really hoping that it was helpful. I'm losing my voice a little bit. Wow. Sorry about that. And thank you for bearing with me throughout this entire conversation and this topic. You can always follow me on YouTube. I do post videos, and it's called designerhead.co. It will lead you directly to my YouTube channel. You can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Medium, where I write and publish periodically. For mentorship, I'm available at on adplist.org. And of course, my website, which is myname.com. And on that note, thank you. And I guess now we can open up for questions.
Thanks a lot, Yan. I think this was a really great session on, one of the most crucial topics that, many of us tend to, overlook sometimes. So thanks a lot for that. And yeah, I think we can definitely dive in deep with the questions. And before that, I think I can go ahead and ask you one, if I'm allowed to, by everyone. So, when it comes to self-branding, what happens is a lot of times during, let's say, our day-to-day work schedule and everything, uh, how do you usually keep it in mind that, you have to build your self-brand as you go? And, as it can be to develop certain skills or to even, publish certain things about yourself or share some things about yourself. So, like, do you take specific time out of that, or like, do you do it simultaneously? Like, how would you possibly, suggest, or how do you execute it?
So on the day-to-day operations, right? That's a great question. Thank you for asking. Typically, well, for me, right, on the day-to-day when I do things, my brain kind of, maybe I just trained my brain over time to trigger every time I do something that I haven't done before, or something that is, oh, that is interesting. Let me see how that will play into my general story, right? Anything I do. Other than that, I would say it's not for everyone, and I generally don't do that, but I used to. It's journaling. It's essentially at the end of the day, sitting down and just recalling everything you've done and just kind of try and write it down and see, okay, I've done this, I've done that, I worked with this person, I've talked to this person, we talked about this, we talked about that. Oh, how interesting. We talked about this specific subject that I don't know much about it. Let me go read about it. And then, oh, interesting. I can maybe add that to my resume that now I know this subject, right? That's typically how I go about these things.
All right, that's great. All right then, guys. If you have any questions, we can definitely take this up right now. This might be the best time. And today, what we are also willing to do is, any one of you who would like to ask those questions yourself, I think you can ask them in the Q&A, and I would possibly allow you to, come live and ask them to Yan yourself. Yan, would you like that?
Sure, absolutely. Love interacting with people.
All right, that's great then. Okay, let's take one from Rayvant. Okay, Rayvant, let's, just simply allow you to talk, and you can talk now.
Yeah. Uh, Hi, this is Revant. I'm
Hi.
from Hyderabad, India. So I have this. So I recently moved into UX role, and also I just want to know how to consistently be driven to deliver, contribute without losing your motivation and inspiration, and also how to manage your low times and the down times when you have it, when you get the.
Let me try and kind of see if I got your question correctly. You're asking how to consistently be inspired and deliver great work, and how
Yes.
to manage your downtime.
Yes. Yes. Perfect.
Okay. So for me, and again, I don't expect anyone to live life the way I live life, right? It's everyone is unique. As I mentioned before, I'm a former soldier, and so I'm really used to really tight schedules and planned out days, if you will. My days fairly planned out by the minute. What it means is I love information, and so in order to constantly be inspired, I think I lost. Oh, no, we didn't. Okay. Um, in order to constantly be, inspired and keep myself motivated and constantly be at the edge of what's going on in the world and what's going on in the tech industry and design, I consume a lot of information. And my information I consume when I have free time. Typically, that is morning when I make breakfast, I listen to tech news. Then when I have breakfast, I actually watch YouTube videos that are related to the world news because I do follow that. Then throughout the day, my homepage on my browser is Musely. I don't know if people familiar with that. It's a resource by Envision. It's muz.li. Essentially, you make it as your homepage, and every single morning you'll have the most latest and greatest in inspiration for design. It can be visual, it can be tech, it can be anything. You can curate your kind of homepage as you want it. So every time I open up a browser or a tab in my browser, my Chrome, I'll see inspiring things in design. Apart from that, I read a lot of books. On my personal website, there is a library that I curate for people. So you can always go there. If you go to yangrinshtein.com and then hit on library, you'll see a list of books that I recommend as educational, inspirational, and my personal favorites. At the bottom, I also recommend different podcasts and other things that I consume on a regular basis. I listen to podcasts as well. During my lunchtime, I typically watch YouTube videos that are related to design. And I interact with a lot of different designers in the industry, so I constantly talk with other people. And so I draw inspirations from them as well. How do I manage my downtime? I typically use my downtime for my personal projects. And those are Designer Head, which is my YouTube channel. I write blogs on Medium and publish it. I mentor a lot. I mentor 3 people a week, typically, in the morning before I start my day. I talk at different events like this. That's my kind of my free time is being managed like that. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, Yan. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Thanks, Revant. Uh, okay. Let's take another one. Yash asked the Yash. Okay, Yash, would you like to go and you can ask the question yourself?
Hey, hi, Yan. So, I'm audible.
Yes, you are. Yes.
So I want to ask one question. Like, being the only designer in my organization, as you said that we should build up a brand by standing up and saying yes to the work most of the time. So, in my organization, being the only designer, people tends to believe that I can work with graphic design, I can work with other design related stuff. So, is that better to always help them? And as being an only designer in my organization, sometimes I also feel left out about the industry, how it works. I'm very unknown about it. So, what would you suggest? How should I go with this?
I apologize. Would you mind typing up your question because there was a lot of noise behind it and I couldn't really understand what you were saying.
I'm sorry for that. Okay, I will type it.
Thank you.
All right. Till then, let's. Okay. We have another question by Maham Arshad. Would you like to go live, Maham, or like would you like me to, speak to Yan on behalf of your? Okay, all right. I'll just, yeah, please. Okay. So, Jan, you said one golden rule is to focus on one thing about yourself. Can you please explain what kind of trait it should be? Personal like yours, that is honesty, or it can be professional, like stand for environmental sustainability in all of my products. So, can you please elaborate on that?
So focusing is essentially selecting one thing that you consider to be that you consistently want to talk about, right? As an example, I consistently like to talk about design education. That's one of the things that I do like to talk about consistently, and that's my focus mostly. I do talk a lot about, and it all ties together with my belief in practices in hiring junior designers. It plays well with what I do as a mentor. It plays well with different educational organizations like here right now, this one that I collaborate and do things. And so I'm very vocal in so I'm a member of a design leadership forum. It's a global kind of organization for design leaders. And I'm very vocal there about that. I've been quoted many times in all of their different documentations that they have about this subject. So that's my focus right now. But my focus changes, right? Before that, I was talking about a lot designing for cross-generational for probably like 4 or 5 years. I was talking about that. The focus can change. It doesn't have to be like one thing that you carry throughout your entire career. But when you find that focus, you stick to it for a period of time that eventually becomes that, okay, this person knows what they're talking about in this specific subject, right? So for instance, for the last 3 years, 4 years prior to 2022 and 2021, I was very vocal about accessibility. I was very vocal about designing for cross-generational. What it means is designing for both the Gen Z and the aging population and the older generation. I've done studies on that. I've published some publications with that research on the cross-generational technology perception. So that was my focus for that time. Now my focus is mostly on design education, young generation of designers and transitioners.
Right. Okay. So coming back to Yash's question, while I am the only designer in my organization, should I say yes to every design world that makes my brand better? And also being the only designer, I feel left out about how the industry works. So what would you suggest about that?
So I've been a single designer in many cases, especially when you work for a startup. And I love startups. That's my natural habitat. I found myself in many instances being the single designer. I don't think so. Helping does not mean being complacent or being accepting for everything that people ask you to do, right? It means that if somebody truly needs help. But if people just saying, "Oh, I need, can you design this? Can you design that? Can you design this, that, and whatnot?" If it's out of your scope and you don't have time for that, you can always say no. Saying no is also equally as powerful to saying yes and being helpful, right? It also brings kind of a dignity to the point of, I know my price, I know my value, and I'm not going to just choose things because you asked me to. You always need to have this kind of a balance and know your boundary of where do you feel people are stepping over and becoming more abusive of your creative power and abilities, rather than just genuinely needing your help. In terms of not being too exposed in the industry because you're a single designer, that should not stop you. Why? Because there is, I don't know if we're being recorded, we are being recorded, but pardon my language, there's a shit ton of different design organizations and places, Slack channels. You have the Discords for designers. There's a bunch of different channels there. This organization right here, ADP list, there's a list. You can actually Google, I think you can Google the best UX and product design Slack channels. And there is a Notion, I forgot the link to, I would have just dropped it here. But there is a link to a Notion project that has, I think, like 100 and some channels that you can tap into. And get that's what I'm talking about in terms of your brand. Get involved, right? Involved with the get involved with the community. Share your opinion, share your knowledge, get their knowledge, get their opinions, accept it, learn from it, be active, be visible, right? When you get to these Slack channels, don't just sit there and listen. Somebody has a question, you know how to answer. You might think you have an answer. Answer it. Even if you're wrong. If you think it's your answer and you believe in that answer, answer it. Maybe somebody will say, no, I don't believe that. That's fine, right? You don't have to agree on everything with everyone, but be involved, be seen.
Right. So Yash, I've also dropped a link for you
Thank
where
you.
where you can join as many Slack channels as you would like and see which one works out best for you.
Yeah,
And you
just don't overdo it. I've seen designers that join like 15, 20 different design channels and they get so overwhelmed with too many because every channel has another 50 or so rooms or whatever they call them inside of it. And so it can get very overwhelming. Be selective. Select the ones that you think are best for you.
Right. Yes, you can also join the ProApp Slack channel, and we have a lot going on there as well. So coming back to the next question, Jennifer has one. So let's see if Jennifer would like to ask the same to you. Jennifer, you can now unmute yourself and ask Yan about your question. I think
And that's it.
Hello, can you hear me?
We
Hello.
can now.
Hello.
Yes.
My God, network.
yes, Jennifer.
Hello.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
All right, I think.
Want to type it up?
Sure. So Jennifer asked the question that do you have a mentorship program? Because Jennifer is a complete newbie.
Do I have a mentorship program? That's a great question. I've been toying with an idea of creating my own program. I do not have one right now. However, if I'm going to be creating something like that, that's going to cost. And my recommendation, so my mentorship program that I'm thinking about or considering of doing, it's not necessarily for complete. So here's the thing. Here's my dilemma, and I'll be very honest here with everyone. As I mentioned, I do like to be brutally honest with people. My dilemma is the fact that my time is incredibly short. Like I don't have a lot of time. I have a full-time job. I also consult certain startups as well. I work with a lot of different organizations. I do a lot of things. I record my videos for my YouTube channel. I write periodically. I mentor through ADP lists. So probably the most cost-effective, which is free, it's going to be ADP list. But on ADP list, you can book time with me, and time is very limited. Right now, my time is booked all the way through end of April. Like if you want to talk to me, unfortunately, my calendar is not available until probably May. So when I start thinking about creating some sort of like a program where people can tap into me directly and have a scheduled long-term relationship mentorship, if you will, that's going to be costly. That means that I will charge for that because it is my unfortunate time that I'm taking away from my family that I need to dedicate for that. And it's going to be, again, very limited to very few people. There is literally one mentee right now that I am carrying periodically and regularly for the past 6 months, and we're still continuing. And my dilemma here is people who are trying to enter into the field, people who are transitioning or starting out, typically don't have a lot of money, and I don't want to take that money. But unfortunately, I also can't spend all of my time because I still have to, as everyone else, eat and charge for that service. So that's my dilemma, right? If you want to follow me on LinkedIn and follow my website, because if I do make a decision to launch that program sometime this year, I will make that announcement typically on LinkedIn and my website. And I'll create a special place for it. Then if you still want to do that, sure, I'll be happy to.
All right. Okay, so let's take one last question. That is from an anonymous attendee. That is it okay to rarely share my works to others, especially on social media, because I want to be a low-key designer.
Can you repeat that again?
So is it okay to rarely share my works to others, especially on social media, because I want to be a low-key designer? I am not sure what a low-key designer is.
So let me, I guess, rephrase that or try and understand if I'm getting it correctly. So low-key designer, that means you don't want to have your own brand. You don't want to be visible. You don't want to be known, but you want to continue designing. Yeah, you can do that. I mean, I know some very successful designers that they're not as known, but they build a career, right? So yeah, you can do that, but it's just going to take you longer. Yeah, it's probably going to take you longer time to build that credibility with just your work, nothing else, right? And even then, some people might question, are you actually the person designing this, or there's somebody else, or maybe you're downloading pre-made templates and just adjusting them. There might be a lot of questions, but sure, take it as a challenge, go for it. I mean, if that's what you want to do. I don't think personal branding is for everyone. I don't think it's being visible and being known. It's for everyone because it can be tiring. It can be a lot of work outside of your regular work, right? Yes, I did have me personally, I did have a moment where I was exhausted from everything. And for a few years, I didn't do anything. I had zero presence online for a few years. I was just concentrated on my work at the company I was working at, period. It was a good time. I would go to work, I'll finish my work, I'll go home, I'll watch TV, I'll read books. You know, I didn't do much else. I rested a lot. But then because of my personality, I constantly feel that I need to do more. But that's just who I am. If you would read anything about me, and trust me, there's a lot of numbers that I typically try to lower. As I mentioned, I have projects from 2003. I did a count of all the projects that I worked on since 2003. That came to be around 600 and something. I talk about 300 publicly because I directly worked with around 300 or so companies in my career.
Right.
I'm just hungry for knowledge all the time.
Right. Okay, then I think that's it for the questions. And thanks a lot, Yan. It was a really great time to learn from you and understand actually what is the importance and how do you actually execute self-branding. So thanks a lot for that. And
thank you everyone for having me. Thank you for inviting me. And it was a bliss. It was a bliss. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Everyone as well. Thanks for joining in on a Saturday evening or wherever you are tuning in from. We hope to see you next Saturday. And yeah, good night, everyone.
Have a good night. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks a lot, yeah.